METS. It's organized both by FICCI, West Bengal State Council, and in partnership with Austrade. We know Australia is very strong in mining and mining equipment. And the natural advantages to Eastern India, based out of Kolkata, but in the state of West Bengal, Bihar, Jharkhand, and other areas, is a mining center of India. Both Eastern India and Australia are very rich in minerals and raw materials that come out of minerals. But the real driver of the Indian economy is the energy coming out of these minerals, and which Australia has leadership in. So we would, we are very excited in hosting this very important webinar, talking about the opportunities of mining equipment, of mining, of using and exploiting the minerals out of Eastern India for the industries based in this region. There are many players who are already working with Australian companies, Indian companies, Eastern Indian companies working with Australian companies. And we have, but I think the potential is huge. The need for energy is a key driver. The cost of energy, and also the cleanliness of that energy is a key driver in our industry. So learning from people who are outside energy on how to benefit from this Australian-Indian collaboration in mining equipment, in mining, is key. The first coal mine in India is, I think, almost 250 years old. It was in Raniganj in 1775 or 76. The coal sector was nationalized in 1973. And the goal of coal nationalization was energy independence. That hasn't been achieved. There's been enough policies now for privatizing the coal industry. And in that, private sector, both in India and Australia, can collaborate in exploiting Indian mineral potential and serve Indian industry. I am an user of coal in the tea industry, and it's extremely expensive. It's unavailable most of the time. We have to buy our entire annual need of coal in January because we aren't sure whether we will get the coal. And worst is there's illegal coal in Northeast being exploited from surface areas, which are sold to the industry, which damage the environment in a way that is unsustainable. There are many sectors in India which is very energy dependent. In Eastern India, energy is a big cost. So listening to experts during this event and learning how we can benefit by having a more advanced energy industry would be great. It's great to see the participation today, more than 200 people, a lot of people from the industry, a lot of people from Australia, people who've logged in from Sydney and other parts of Australia. The Australian High Commission in the Queensland Trade and Investment, Victoria Trade and Investment, Australia Industry Association, mining companies in Australia. Thank you very much for your interest. You will make this session richer. With these words, I welcome you once again. Ms. Catherine Gallagher, Minister Commercial, South Asia, Austrade, will speak on Australia-India resource relationship. Mr. Rajesh Ivaturi, Partner Advisory, Ernst & Young, will moderate the session. And special welcome to Ms. Vandana Yadav, to Mr. Partho Sen. I look forward to listening to the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Chatterjee, and good afternoon. And for those in Sydney, good afternoon to those in Sydney, and good morning to all of you in India. Today's webinar is an opportunity to remind everyone of the strong relationship that already exists between India and Australia in the METS sector and provide an update on the growing bilateral resource relationship between our two countries. Going as far back as 1989, the Pipavav coal mining project of Coal India was set up by White Industries Australia under a bilateral arrangement and is still testament to the efficacy of Australian technology in mining. A joint working group on energy and minerals was established by the two governments in 1999 and recently upgraded to a ministerial level dialogue to form the backbone of cooperation in resources. CSIRO Australia and CMPDIL, a subsidiary of Coal India, commenced a science and technology project on coal mine methane in 2016. And the Geological Survey of India and Geoscience Australia also signed an MOU for capacity building in India in that same year. There have been ongoing high-level resource-related missions and ministerial visits both ways. A joint statement by the two Prime Ministers in 2014 outlined the aim for greater cooperation in clean coal and mining education. And at the recent virtual summit of the two Prime Ministers on the 4th of June 2020, an MOU on mining and processing of critical minerals was announced. These mechanisms and actions endorse the intentions of the two countries to cooperate in the areas of mining, minerals and energy at a government-to-government level. Beyond that, as we know, it is the business-to-business linkages and engagement that testify to the success of the cooperation. I'm very pleased to say that as many as 40 Australian METS suppliers, both large companies and SMEs, have a presence in India, either on their own or through partnerships. And I understand that 50% of these suppliers have their presence in Kolkata, as you know, the mining hub of India. And to a large or smaller extent, their presence has provided local value add and builds capacity. And so I'm confident that the combination of the already on the grounds activity that is going on and the strengthening of the bilateral government relationship through the signing of the CSP, as we call it, or the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, our relationships and opportunities for cooperation for our companies can only grow stronger and stronger. And on that note, I would like to take the opportunity to thank FICCI for arranging today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much, Catherine, for those wonderful remarks. Thank you for that. May I invite Ms. Vandana Yadav next. She's a IAS officer, Secretary, Industry, Commerce and Enterprises Department, Government of West Bengal, and MD, WBIDC. Ms. Vandana, over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to those joining us from Sydney. Mr. Chatterjee, Ms. Catherine Gallagher, Minister Commercial, Mr. John Madew, Head of Mining and Resources, very warm welcome to you. I welcome Mr. Harsh Sachdev, Ms. Simon Askey-Doran, and Mr. Rajesh Shivaturi, Partner Advisory for today's session. I think before anything else, I must congratulate FICCI, State Council and Austrade for organizing this interactive webinar on Australia-India partnership. Mining equipment and technology is something which is becoming greatly relevant today, and I think it's very topical that the subject was chosen for the seminar. I also don't need to stress on the importance of Bengal and Australia's economic cooperation possibilities. Australia has already identified West Bengal as one of the 10 focus states for Australian businesses across a wide range of areas, mining, education included, in the India economic strategy. And we were very fortunate that the former ambassador herself had come down to Calcutta and discussed this strategy with us. We had the pleasure of hosting her at WBIDC, and it was a real pleasure interacting. It is also a pleasure that Australia became a partner country for the BGBS in 2019, and Australia set up the consulate in Calcutta the very same year. So these just reinforce the economic potential between the two areas. Coming to mining, I think Calcutta has historically been and continues to remain a very major hub for mining region of Eastern India. The biennial exhibition on mining, which is International Mining Equipment, Minerals and Metals Exhibition, I think its success is a testimony to the position of Calcutta in the mining sector. There has always been a huge participation, and there's been less delegation from Australia, China, Czech Republic, Germany, Poland, Russia, UK, even USA at this event, and we've always been a consistent supporter of that and look forward to this exhibition. Bengal, as you would all be aware, is a very leading coal producing state in the country, and we contribute about 25% of the national coal production. The coal industry has been a very significant contributor to the economy, and which includes employment generation. Coal in Bengal is also not the only mineral available. We also have a very big resource and a very major and minor mineral resources, which we have now recognized the need that this is also a resource which we need to operationalize, where we need to update our databases, we need to make it more robust. And we realize that this requires utilizing the technology which we already have. And also get down into further detailing and identifying of the zones and putting this in the public domain. So the sharing of knowledge of our mineral resources is a very important requirement from the state side, and something which we have come to realize in recent times. Coming specifically to Deocha Pachami, I would say that most of you would be aware that it is the second largest coal block in the world, and it is the largest in India. It is spread over an area of over 12 square kilometers. And the reserves are estimated to be over 2,000 million tons. I mean, it's just a huge, even just conceptualizing of this seems difficult for a layman. This block was initially allotted to 4 states and has now been reallocated to the government of West Bengal exclusively. So now we are very, very keen to kickstart this project. And we would want to do this within this financial year. In fact, recently there has been a very high-level visit to the region, with the chief secretary and all the relevant secretaries going to the region to work out the local issues. The things which have become clear to us is that given the size and the depths at which coal is available in the entire big block, this project has to be executed in phases. We will have to make use of the best technology and the most suitable mining technology and practices which are available. We realize that this is a technically very challenging project because there is a very thick layer of basalt above the coal reserve. And this is largely unexplored. So after all of this, the technicians have considered that foreign expertise and technology will be very, very necessary for making this into a viable mining reserve, given its magnitude and the depth at which the coal is available. There is also growing technical consensus that open cast mining will be difficult and will have to use underground methods. The Polish companies have already expressed a lot of interest in studying this area and assessing the technology or the means available. As Mr. Chatterjee had mentioned, while economic feasibility is one part of the coal reserve and its mining and exploration, the ecological concerns are again a very, very major deciding factor. And I think we have to become aware of the state-of-art technologies, the equipment, the services which are available, and we must use to ensure that the ecological adverse effects of mining are minimized. Carbon emissions, improved production capacities, economic friendly, ecologically friendly ways of mining are all very, very important while we look at the safety standards as well. In the context of all these ecological and economical requirements of our coal reserves, we become aware of Australia's METS sector, and we realize that it is not just a world leader. It generates over 90 billion annually in its technological and expertise and equipment export. And it has a presence in over 200 countries, which is literally the entire globe. We also realize that Australia is already cooperating with a large number of projects across India and in the mining sector, which is spread over R&D, capacity building, underground coal gasification, etc. Given this background, we would be very keen to welcome any Australian METS entrants which would like to set up their office in Calcutta or get involved in the emerging mining sector, whether it is Dilcha Pachami or the other explorations which we are planning to undertake. IDC, as the promotional agency for the state, would be very keen to facilitate any such venture, to take people around, to show them, to provide the hand-holding support, any sort of assistance required. IDC would be very, very happy to come forward with that. I think with that assurance, I should once again thank FICCI and Austrade for organizing this session. And the participation, as again Mr. Chatterjee had mentioned, is very encouraging, and there's a great belief, reinforces our belief that this is something which will do very well. I'm sure today's deliberations will not just share light on the possibilities, but will also identify some concrete opportunities by which we can collaborate and take our interactions further. With that, I wish great success to today's webinar and look forward to any interaction and any way in which IDC can assist. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think the points you made are very relevant. As Indian mining sector is opening up, we need to build capabilities across the value chain. On that point, it's a good time to invite Mr. John Madew, Head of Mining and Resources, Center of Excellence, Austrade, Sydney. Mr. Madew will talk about, he will set the context and talk about the mining and equipment technology sectors, especially the kind of skills they bring in from the Australian point of view. Mr. Madew, over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon to you all from Sydney, and good morning in India. And thank you for taking part in this FICCI Austrade METS briefing today. As you just heard, I'm John Madew, and I head the Mining and Resources Centre of Excellence for the Australian Trade and Investment Commission. And we are the official trade and investment promotion agency for the Australian government. It's really great to be a part of this session today. I've recently completed a 4-year posting in India, based both in New Delhi and Mumbai. So this topic really does combine my past and present experience. So to put it simply, Australia is a mining superpower. It dwarfs all other exports from our country. We are known for our expertise in this sector, and we have been a key mining jurisdiction for the past century. We are top 5 producer of most major minerals, as well as the world's largest LNG exporter. Australia has a really compelling competitive advantage in mining. With a large resource endowment, geographically proximate to major resource markets, stable regulatory environment, long-term track record, entire mining life cycle from junior explorer to major producing mines, and a capital market that understands the inherent risks of this sector, we have a sector that really has performed for us. The METS sector, the mining equipment, technology and services, has grown off the back of this success to be a significant exporter and employer in its own right. Again, our competitive advantage in METS is around innovation, strong governance, being highly efficient, and companies that will go anywhere to do business. Naturally, 66% of Australia's METS companies are exporters. So you bring this together, and Deloitte estimates that the resources and METS sector in Australia contribute over $240 billion to our economy. The Australian METS sector employ over 300,000 people. I know that's a big number for Australia. It's a small number for India, but that's really significant for us. And these workers are primarily in high-skilled and high-value jobs, contributing to a gross value add to our economy for METS alone of $92 billion and generating exports valued at over $15 billion. So the mining and METS sector is an integral part of the Australian economy. What can this mean for India? We know India is looking to develop its resource sector, particularly coal. India can leverage Australia's METS know-how across the mining value chain to build a more efficient and sustainable mining sector. We're already seeing examples of this in India across 5 key niche areas, including holistic enterprise-level consultancy across the entire mining value chain, and a great example being RPM Global Advisory, who have helped some major companies in India achieve significant improvements, and they also have a local presence. We'll shortly hear much more about that from Simon of RPM. Secondly, mining IT, including mine planning software, mine management systems, computerized maintenance and management systems. So again, examples right now, MapTech and Modular Mining are running projects across India to help clients become more efficient. It's estimated that 60% of the world's mines run on Australian software, and we think the picture is the same in India. Thirdly, elements required for Industry 4.0 or the digital transformation of mining are another strength of Australia, with IoT, IT convergence, big data analytics, and immersive virtual reality leading to intelligent mining to make pit-to-port customer process as integrated as possible. At the system end are companies such as RPM Global and RCT, who design and integrate systems. At the component end are companies such as Real-Time Instruments and Scantech, examples of on-belt mining scanning. TrekBlaze, another company, offers in-motion weighing and amp control, which specializes in electrical and control systems. Safety systems and equipment is another strength for Australia. Orica exemplifies safety in blast operations. MineArc offers underground rescue chambers, and GroundProbe offers slope stability warning radars. And last but not least, skills training, including through virtual reality simulators offered by the likes of Brisbane-based Immersive Technologies. So I hope that gives you a flavor of the importance of the METS sector and some of the work Australia is doing today in India. If you want to know more, Austrade have 3 staff working closely with the Australian METS businesses which are looking at India. Partha, Varun, and Ramki, who are on the call today, would be really happy to talk to you about any of this further. So I'd like to thank you for your time today. I'd like to thank FICCI for working with the Austrade team to put on this great webinar, and I'd like to wish you a good rest of the day and enjoy this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Madew. That's really useful. I can see a few hands going up in terms of questions. The way we are structuring this session is that we will sort of first hear through all the presenters, and we'll have a Q&A session towards the end of it around 11:50, 11:55 as per the scheduled time. So for all those who have questions, hold on to your questions, or there's also a chat box. If you want to put your questions on the chat box, please do that. We'll pick it up when we get into the Q&A session. Let me next invite Mr. Harsh Sachdev. Harsh is the Managing Director, S&T Mining Company Private Limited. Harsh will give us a perspective on the technology adoptions in India, and he'll give the Indian perspective after hearing from Mr. Madew. And let's hear from Harsh about how these technologies are getting adopted in India, and how Harsh sees these the future of such technologies and collaborations with players like Austrade and others. Harsh, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so good afternoon to everybody in Australia, and good morning to all my friends and colleagues here. The Minister from Australia, it's a pleasure to see you. Ms. Vandana Yadav, thank you for being part of this session. Mr. Rudra Chatterjee from FICCI, Chairman of the West Bengal Council, Mr.
We can't hear.
Mr. Sachdev, can you please check your audio? We're not able to hear.
Hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
now we
sir.
can hear you. Yes.
Okay, my apologies. Okay, so do you want me to go back and repeat?
So maybe just a few pointers on this slide. Yeah, that should be good enough.
Okay, so essentially I'm structuring this presentation into the mining sector. What is it? The mining sector, where is it going? What are the structural changes happening? Because the government has been fairly active in the last couple of years after 2014-15. There is a new structure in mining emerging. What is that structure? What are the opportunities and the companies which are already there in the METS, in the mining value chain, the METS companies, which you've heard Mr. Madew talk about. So this is essentially what the presentation is structured around. So I'll straight away go into the first slide, which is what is the mining sector. Now India has over 1,500 operating mines, produces 95 minerals. 4 of the minerals are fuel related, 10 metallic minerals, 23 non-metallics, 3 atomic, 55 minor minerals. So you have a fairly vibrant and large, well-spread mining sector here. This chart is giving you the FY19 value figures, which were close to 1,75,000 crores. The bulk of it, of course, was coal and iron ore. There is a large spread of other minerals, as already mentioned. Last year, which was FY20, the sector was not completely stagnant because towards the end of it, we had coronavirus hitting, but it definitely affected the growth. So it grew by about 1.7%. Like I mentioned, coal and iron ore comprise really 80% of the sector in value terms. In volume terms, it'll probably be even higher. In terms of just giving a perspective, India now ranks second in the world in its coal output after China. Of course, there is a big gap. And the Indian coal sector is dominated by Coal India, which is the world's largest coal company by volume. And over 90% of coal getting produced in India is by state-owned companies, which is essentially Coal India, Singareni. India is also the 4th largest producer of iron ore in the world. Australia, Brazil, and China being the top 3. So this is essentially an overview of the sector as it exists just now. Where are we headed? This is a chart giving you the coal production, where we were and where we are going. You just heard a bit about coal from Mr. Rudra Chatterjee, who said he's having a rough time getting coal. Well, as you can see, India has been importing quite a bit of coal, which is rising year on year despite best efforts. So last year, the import was almost 243 million tons. And I've drawn a line chart on top, which is really showing consumption, which I've just added the domestic consumption, which has also been rising to keep pace with the consumption. FY24 is really the plan which the government has drawn up for coal. 1 billion is expected out of Coal India, and another 500 million from outside non-Coal India private companies, which are likely to produce coal. This is the aspirational target set by the government. So to that extent, there's a massive boom around the corner. As far as coal usage is concerned, India's bulk of coal usage goes into generation of power. And the per capita energy consumption at present is just 0.6 tons of equivalent oil equivalent, which is really 1/3 the global average. So you can see where we are headed in terms of demand for coal. The energy mix is moving towards renewables, and last year's figure had about 72% of the power, which was thermal. It had increased, the renewable number had increased from 21 to 24% roughly. But when I look at the projections till 2040, India would still have about 45, 46, 47% of its power through thermal. So to that extent, we are not running away from coal in the near foreseeable future. The next I've already mentioned. So I'll go to the next one, which is really iron ore. Where are we on iron ore, which is the other large mineral getting produced in India? So this is the chart which shows you about iron ore. We had roughly about 206 million tons of production last year, which was almost stagnant compared to the year previous. Uh, we had a slowdown in the economy, and a lot of iron ore goes into steel making. So to that extent, this trajectory normally follows the steel trajectory. But the projections for iron ore are headed at 241 million tons by FY28 and 447 million tons by FY31. And that's essentially because there is a huge steel target laid out by the government as per the steel policy. What also happened was on March 31st, a lot of leases of non-captive mines were non-operational. They got expired, and this included 46 operational mines. So 329 non-captive mines had their leases which expired on March 31st. Amongst the large players, steel players, which were integrated like Tata Steel, SAIL, they had their own iron ore mines, so they had captive mines. JSW did not have captive mines, but has recently acquired, although they are not all operational. So the national steel policy envisages almost 300 million tons of steel by FY31, which means a projected consumption of almost 447 million tons. Now, if you see the coal and iron ore picture, it just tells you where we are headed in terms of consumption and therefore what will be the requirements of this sector. What are the structural changes which are happening? Now, the Indian mining sector is changing fairly dramatically because in 2014, there was a Supreme Court judgment where all the existing coal mines which were allocated through allocation route were revoked, and the government and the country decided they're going to go ahead through a auction route to give out the new mines. And this chart, which I put up, shows where we are going with auctions from 2015-16 to the last year. And you can see the numbers are increasing. Now, what does this mean? And you can see in 1920, 43 mines went through the auction route. The details are there. So this is a fundamental change which has taken place in the way mines were given out. These auctions were transparent. Only the current way the auctions are done, the auction price has to be quoted in two stages. One is the initial one, and then you're picked. The highest is the starting point of the second stage. And the critical thing is the price has to be quoted in terms of the revenue, percentage of revenue which you will share with the government, which is really a top line based revenue. Now, in the recent past, end of last financial year, beginning this year, a lot of auctions have been completed of the iron ore mines in Odisha. And the premiums at which these mines went were anything between 90 to 141%. This is in addition to the royalty payable and the statutory dues, which also need to be paid, the GST, which is roughly about 18%. So the long and short is the acquisition of mines has become transparent. It's become it's the cost of acquisition has definitely changed very dramatically from what it was in the past. And so what does this mean in terms of the sector, the way it's emerging now? It's changed very dramatically. In the recent iron ore auctions, JSW Steel, which bid very aggressively, got almost over 1 billion tons of resource of the mines which were up for auctions. Recently, 41 coal blocks were flagged off by the Prime Minister for auctioning. And the coal sector, which was also opened up dramatically because as Mr. Chatterjee was mentioning, it was nationalized in 41. And till now, coal followed end use restriction method, which means you could take it if you had a requirement and mine it and use it. But now the end use restriction has been removed. So you can actually mine coal in the country and use it for whatever you want or even export it. What has also happened is the government is trying its level bets that the size of the mines, the capacity of the mines which come up for auctions are far bigger than the existing, as compared to the existing operating mines, which you have a lot of small standalone operators and others who are using. I am not including Coal India, of course, which continues to be volume wise one of the largest or the largest coal company in the world. Now, the auctions are seeing large companies coming in and replacing small mine owners because the auctions are transparent. They go to the highest bidder. And to that extent, the JSW example is a good one. The transparent auction also ensures that the new owner has no choice because the cost of acquisition is higher. The money has gone to the state, who's really the owner of the resource in any case. And to that extent, there is but no choice but to run these mines with a high degree of efficiency so that they are competitive in the sector. The L1 bidder and the MDO way of operation, which was really the state-owned way because it had to justify who is the bidder, which was based on competitive bidding in terms of operations for technology suppliers and equipment suppliers, and the MDO way. And by MDO, I only mean the contract, the way it's being run at present in a lot of state enterprises, not necessarily what you will still have contract mining, but perhaps not the same way as the current MDO system works in the state. So this is really the new emerging structure of mining industry in India compared to what it was in the past. What are the opportunities? There's just been another discussion paper 2 days back. PL and ML options have now been available through a policy change. Mining is a long lead time business, so there is a need for capital providers. Since if you look at the efficiency parameters of the coal mine auction blocks, there is a good out of 66, I think 2/3 of the time is just time required for starting up the mine, getting approvals and statutory requirements. Of course, we are proposing to the government that even that be compressed and you can have blocks given out which are pre-embedded with clearances. There is a need for coal wash plant technology, which will be coming in the moment you have the private sector which steps in. Tata Steel has its own coal mines, and one of the most efficient coking coal washeries are run by them. I'm sure more and more as the private sector steps in, the need for this will go up more. The grades of coal are declining, and so it's true for quite a few other minerals also. So there will be a requirement of beneficiation. Mining efficiency multipliers. You'll have on-belt scanners, drilling and blasting improvements, efficiency, anything which can drive up the efficiency to keep the mining costs down and make the sector competitive will now come more and more into play. Safety gadgets in terms of methane gas detectors, in terms of slope stability measures, skill enhancers, training for HEMM, environment-related issues, mining equipments which will be required, auxiliary power units for dumpers, heat exchanger for HMM, variable fatigue monitors. Some of these are already in use and are being used in India. Digitization, the digital mine, cloud analytics, communication. What is happening to other industries, the mining industry will also start to catch up with the same. Perhaps a local partner would be the right way forward to take care of blending the old needs with the new requirements, with the sector dramatically changing in its outlook, with the auctions playing a major role. There are quite a few METS companies in the mining value chain. I'm not going to read out the names because some of the representatives are present here. And to that extent, these are companies already in the game here, which I'm sure a lot of others will also get in. But this is really representative of the change which is already happening and will probably happen more rapidly as the mining sector becomes more and more competitive and goes through the auction route, and you have larger and larger players getting into the game. Yeah, a lot of these were also mentioned by Mr. John Madew. And so I'm not mentioning them, each of them individually, but they are very famous names. Some of them there for a long time, like Simtas already, who have been also advising Director General Mine Safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Harish. Yes, I think the way the value chain is evolving in India right now, the government has decided that all mineral allocation would happen through some kind of a bidding process. The revenue sharing is the latest flavor of the season, and in any of these bidding processes, be it MDO, be it exploration license or whatever, given the competition, cost efficiency is a must. And digital technologies obviously can help us from a cost efficiency perspective, productivity enhancement, safety, of course. All these levers obviously can be best leveraged through digital technologies. Thank you very much for that session, sir. Let me invite Mr. Simon Askey-Doran, who is the General Manager, Business Development Advisory, RPM Global Sydney. Simon will talk about some of the leading practices in terms of digital technology, especially for mining. Let's listen in and see, how we can, what kind of these technologies can be applicable to India. Simon, over to you. Thank you.
Great. Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon. It's going to be a problem. Just let me get that fixed technically.
Can I request everyone to go on mute, please? Yeah.
Okay. No, we've got a sound problem. Let me just try that one more time.
If you're logging in through multiple devices, request you to put one of them on mute. Simon, we can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now? Can you just kill the board? So how's that?
Better, yes.
Sound check?
Yes, much better. This is good, Simon. You can go ahead, yeah.
Okay, very good. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. So good afternoon, honourable guests, colleagues and friends. Great to be here talking about METS in India. As Harsh indicated earlier, that I've been to India on several occasions, enjoy it immensely, and I look forward to coming back again when times are different. So this afternoon, Partha and the team at Austrade had asked me to talk about Australian mining equipment and supplies with some focus on the future, some innovation, and how we drive value, lowering cost and risk. So let's get going with that. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about RPM, some of the challenges that we see in India, historical and current, beyond COVID, a little bit about what is innovation and why does Australia bat above its weight in innovation. How do we define intelligent mining? That is, what is something that could take us to the next phase? How do we get production and productivity up in India? How do we learn from some things going on both in India and around the world? As we do that, I'd like to talk a little bit about data and standards, because data is not data and it's not all the same, and we'll explore that a little. Then I'll talk about some examples of Australia at work in the mining industry, and then perhaps the opportunity, both of buying services from Australian companies and their products, but perhaps also investing in companies, and talk about some of the cycles of Australian companies that we see. So a little bit about RPM. We're an Australian Stock Exchange listed company, so we're public. We have 23 offices globally, more than 300 people, more than 1,000 global associates. So we work broadly and collaborate around the world. We've been around for over 50 years. We've worked in 125 countries, in more than 5,000 software installs, more than 15,000 mining studies, and created more than $60 billion worth of value for the clients that we've worked with. In India, we have a partner, Gainwell, in Kolkata, and like to thank them for their support and commitment to what we do. Our clients in India over the years have been numerous, and currently we're working, as Harsh indicated, for Tata Steel. We are talking with MDOs who have, from time to time, bid projects and are looking how they can become more efficient, save money, and find better ways to do what they do. And also to some of the government and non-government companies who are looking to drive production and productivity up. So let's talk a little bit about innovation. And I'm just choosing a very simple example that hopefully you've seen, is that when you get to the end of a sauce bottle, you know there's a little bit left, don't you? You can't quite get it out and it sticks around the edge. So what do most of us do? We turn it upside down and sit it on the bench till it all drains into the end, and then we get the last little bit out of the bottle. But what if we thought back 100 years ago, what if we just turned the label upside down? Then perhaps it gave us a different opportunity on how we could think about something. And perhaps that's what innovation is. It's actually a thinking process. It's to think differently, not once, not twice, but on an ongoing basis. I've lost a slide somewhere. I'll just... So why does Australia bat above its weight in innovation? Is it just part of our convict past and a historic past needing to do whatever it takes? The fact that we needed to get out there and explore and understand a very broad land with huge harshness and opportunity? Perhaps part of it's our rich multiculturalism, and that we're good at respecting and working with others. And sometimes just a fighting desire, as our cricket team does occasionally, to show what we can do from down under. Perhaps also it's the deep wave of cultural training of continuous improvement culture that ran right through Australia and around the world in the 90s and is now embedded in today's leaders, and gives us a large core of people with excellence and mastery as core values. As John indicated, we have a very rich endowment of natural resources, and we needed to find ways to efficiently exploit them. We do happen to be at the other end of the world for most of the world's population. We don't have our own huge population base, and so we need to do that efficiently, because if we can't find an efficient way to get resources to the ports, then we can't make money from those resources. So we constantly needed to strive, and still do, to find increasingly more efficient ways to achieve our business model. And then over the last couple of decade or so, the mining downturn and some associated skill shortages have driven us to look for more and different innovative ways to continue change. And so there is this enduring story that drives Australia to be innovative. And we think we take it into a lot of what we do and what we take out as we take our services around the world. If you've seen some of RPM's websites, and I'm sure other companies as well, people are starting to talk about an intelligent mining approach or their data journey. For us, we start thinking about that as multi-layered, right from the ground, from the equipment, up through various layers of management to corporate offices, and understanding that we need to have data that informs people, that drives transparency right through that. And when we can get that connection, we can amplify and accelerate decision-making, which drives productivity and value. So most people are on some form of digital journey. On the left, an icon that we all love and you're very familiar with. But sometimes as that beautiful picture of how we want our business comes to us, we go, it's not quite right. I can't get all the information or the data I need in the format I need. The linkages aren't quite there. We patch them together with spreadsheets, a paper trail, and it slows us down. And it's not quite like that picture. Now, one of the challenges I think is that we think it might be just that the bits are broken or a bit separated. But in fact, quite often the picture is more like this. It's quite a bit more jumbled. There are silos all over the place. Some parts don't talk to each other, and hence we don't get the optimum outcome. We know, as we've been around mines in India, that there are several where there remains a huge opportunity to uplift production and productivity, perhaps not with too much more capital, both physical or human. And those opportunities can exist by having management and people across the whole operation have a better understanding and view of what is happening and what decisions need to be made. And that could be from the condition of the roads, to the maintenance that needs to be carried on trucks, to the preparations for the impending monsoon season, to ensure that the roads are in great shape and can handle the onslaught of weather through difficult times. If we're going to do this, whether it's with RPM, some of our other great companies around Australia and the world, we start thinking of it like this, of integration. That we need systems that cover across operations, tech service, management, procurement, maintenance, and finance. And while large ERP systems like SAP do that as a fundamental source of data storage, that we know that to integrate all the various parts of the mining process, we need something different. So on the left, you can see a range of things that where RPM operates. So in operations, in asset management, products in finance, in the simulation of trucking and hauling and drag lines, of scheduling operations and design. And then as I go around past design, then you'll start seeing all of the other things that we need to link in. And I'll take that into another slide in a minute. But this complete picture of how we start integrating operations is how we see the opportunity going forward for a number of companies, not only in India, but around the world. Just got to slide out of the way. So let's talk about standards for a minute. So as we start talking about moving data around between different suppliers, different companies, different pieces of equipment, we find that we need to get some consistency. For example, the way that a Caterpillar truck and a Komatsu truck record time are different. If we just bring them into a system without some form of comparison, we're going to end up with inconsistencies in what we might want to benchmark. An example of the projects that we've been involved in relate to a standard called ISO 95, which is actually in preparation for the automation of whole systems in the mining industry. We think that this will drive major differences over time. And it's a collaboration between BHP, Orica, Schneider Electric and RPM to help drive this forward. We think it'll be a great step forward for mining. And essential if we're going to start sharing and integrating data. This picture takes the earlier circle and starts looking at some of those brands that you'll be familiar with in the mining industry and how they work. John and Harsh both mentioned Smartcap, which we can see here. Smartcap is a fatigue management system, and it's just one example of data that flows through or can flow through into enterprise planning frameworks and the data that people need to track things and work out what is going on in your operation. So with this sort of vision, about 3 years ago, we bought a company called Minview. Now, Minview is a company that has a whole range of connectors into drills, drag lines, trucks, shovels, Smartcaps, fleet management systems, and allows us to take data from all of those into an area to clean any errant data and send it back to a company in the way that they can then use that for insights and to get a better understanding of what's going on in their operation. As an example, Glencore Coal and Yancoal have all of their data coming in through our offices through secure servers about every 10 to 15 seconds. We clean it up and we get it back to them. It includes things like tyre data. We can tell around a mine if a tyre is running hot or cold. We can look at the strut alarms on those equipments and identify if there's a particular part of the road that needs grading so that the company can dispatch the right equipment to those locations to fix it and thus fix the productivity improvement. To achieve that, this type of scenario that METS companies need is to be able to collaborate across a broad range of companies, both within your country and across the world. John named a range of things that we were good at. One is exploration innovation. We're quite good at this. And there's been this great partnership between Geoscience Australia and India. And we sat back and thought about this. I mean, some of the, we haven't invented all of the techniques, but what we are good at, we believe, is good at thinking about which techniques to apply and which processes to use to gather the right amount of data and applying it to the situation as we start to uncover deep deposits. And in India, as you know, the country at a shallow level has a relatively high range of exploration, but once we get just a little bit below the surface, there is still a huge amount of potential. So beyond that collaboration at a government-to-government basis, there exists opportunities in these exploration areas that I think can yield for India a huge benefit. And again, that opportunity to work with Australian companies. We do ourselves and other competitors and collaborators of ours consult around the world on exploration, on specialist services. For example, we do gas testing and evaluation. We're involved with that collaboration with CSIRO to CMPDI on capacity building for gas evaluation so that you can accelerate your underground coal industry. We know companies like Mine Advice provide specialist geotechnical services to Singarini. Ourselves and others can provide mining studies at all levels, feasibility studies, detailed project reports, and other strategic studies to help you make great decisions on how to allocate your capital and which projects should be prioritised against others. We help Indian banks with financial transactions, independent reviews, block bidding support and value assessments, and then operational improvements. Or, as we suspect will be coming up in the next round, as companies have bid very high prices for their assets, a fast drive to innovation to increase levels of efficiency, amplify decision-making, and make it more production when India absolutely, truly needs it to emerge from this pandemic. We've talked about mining software briefly. Let me just connect a couple of dots. So clearly they're pretty pictures, but Australia invests heavily. As John said, more than 60% of mining software is developed in Australia, and ourselves and our competitors have a range of products that can integrate and can work together to solve the needs that you have. This is an example where we developed a short-term mine planning solution, and we collaborated with a technology group at that time called Mineware. Now, Mineware has been subsequently purchased by Komatsu, as is happening to a range of Australian METS companies, They're being acquired by others. And what this did as part of that short-term planning was to be able to pick up and identify exactly where a bucket of ore came from and went to. And as we do that, we start being able to understand where grade is, where tonnage is, and how it's moving through a mine, and how we need to manage that in stockpiles, through a process plant, applying it to increasing levels of data to optimize processing and get the best yields and value out of the products that are produced. Perhaps if we could do this, we could reduce the ash content in some areas of stone going in railways and increase the amount of productive capacity that's travelling through Indian rail. Just some thoughts. In simulation, ourselves and others can get drone technology to fly mines, put photorealistic wrappers over the actual mine plans, and then digitize haul routes onto them and run experiments as to how to get more out of truck fleets, and thus increase the capital utilization of equipment and get more production, more coal tons out of the ground when it looks like it's plateauing despite the very aggressive goals that exist. I thought next I'd put up just a few examples of companies who are either currently working or next. So today on an OSMINE call, I know Nordatec were there as an engineering company looking through safety and productivity in underground, through communication systems, and other things that help us lower the costs of underground mining. We work with Downer, Antis, McMahon's, Pybar, Burncut and others in Australia as providers of integrated mining services. Several of those have relationships with Indian companies. Mineral Technologies, who we worked with and talked to on the recent AIBX tour, are operating and building wash plants in India. Next door, I thought was interesting is breakthrough ore sorting technology with different technologies which perhaps help unlock some of the ore sorting for some of the other minerals, and in particular in areas where water is an issue. So some of these technologies start solving some of the issues that India has. Scantech also came with us on AIBX and have products which really help in the sorting of coal, but into other areas as well. K2 Fly has some great solutions for storing some of the critical data that we have in resources and reserves reporting, such that corporate data doesn't get lost, which is one of the enduring problems that we see as we go around the world and saying, could we please have the data for that? And is it all nice and in one place? And a company called Interlate, creating predictable outcomes, and a bit like RPM in some ways, collecting data and then manipulating that and getting it back into providing insights. I think I've used up just about all my time, but the opportunity, from Australian companies is, I thought was two, and to be, blunt like Australians can be sometimes, one is to just buy from us. We like people to buy from us. It's a good thing. And as you do buy from us, know that it is that high quality support. But perhaps more importantly, help us specify solutions and take on board our value propositions. Help us innovate around those so that we can get the right outcomes. And maybe find a way to do initial paid works to fund that initial step in. And the other one, perhaps invest in Australian companies. They do often get taken up by larger groups and then grow as we get onto the next big thing. Companies like Mineware to Komatsu, Blast Movement Technologies to Hexagon. There are numerous examples, and there's an opportunity for Indian companies to get involved as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. That was a very, very, very interesting presentation. I think we are struggling on time, but I'm sure we can take a few questions. So let me start by asking this, Simon. See, if you look at the way the Indian mining sector is evolving right now, the sector is opening up in a big way. We had one large monopoly of the CIL on coal. I'm getting an echo here. Sorry. And there are, yeah, and then in other sectors as well, as you're opening up the mining sector, one of the first questions people are asking are the exploration technologies, in terms of, achieving faster explorations, more accurate exploration. What kind of technologies can help in sort of in the exploration phase? I'll get into the operations a little later, but what kind of technologies do you think have you seen in the world are being used for sort of enhancing the exploration experience?
Yeah, so I think the areas that Australia is doing well at in finding those deeper deposits are in relation to things like remote sensing and using satellites at different wavelengths. And a lot of the work in the geophysics. So starting to find techniques where we can actually get deeper traces down into the earth, down potentially up to 1 kilometre. And so it's those type of things, along with magnetic resonance and IP, that in combination start creating new pictures that weren't previously available. If I come back
technologies,
some of the other things are just doing the work really well. So when I was working for Orica years ago, we always used to complain on mine sites that the drillers would drill the holes in all different locations. They weren't in straight lines, and so as you went to evaluate or assess your blasting, you couldn't do that properly. I guess with drilling, as one of those core techniques in exploration, it's to ensure that the exploration design is done well and appropriate for the budget. In Laos recently, we just saw someone decide on a drill pattern and then send multiple rigs right out through the field, drilling a multi-million-dollar program without actually really thinking about how to optimize that. Australia, we tend to do things in stages, and we think that gets a better outcome.
So drilling optimization, 3D modeling, geospatial platforms, integrating data from multiple sources to be able to get a good image of the geological reserves. Yeah, those kind of technologies. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great. So one associated question I'm hearing, I'm just looking at the chat box here. So as India is digging deeper and deeper in, and as you rightly pointed out, the newer mines are having much more complicated geologies than the older ones, where the strip ratios were 1:2, 1:1 in many cases actually initially. Now we're going into 1:8, 1:10, and so on. So as you go deeper, what kind of communication technologies, are there any innovations in terms of communication technologies? Because if you go on the ground, then that's a big challenge, right?
It's not my field of specialization, but I think historically it was leaky feeder. In mines like Syama, which is run by Resolute, an Australian company, which is a highly automated mine, what they put was they actually put a whole a redundant fiber network right through the mine. So they went and created the infrastructure underground that was enabled to run a completely digital automatic process. And they ran it not only one run, but two, so that if one broke, it would still work. So there are many, and there are companies, including Nordatec and, who can help companies do that. There are other international companies, but let's just name them today.
Okay, sure. I'll just take one more with you, Simon, before I get to Harsh. In terms of one of the questions we normally hear from many mining players in India who are relatively nascent in terms of their technology maturity is about what should my technology infrastructure be to be able to embark on this journey? Would just a basic ERP sufficient? SAP, Oracle, whatever. Is that sufficient? Or do I need to have more technology backbone strengthened before I embark on this journey? Any thoughts on that?
Look, that's an excellent question. Where to start? But I think if I was to think about it, it's just as some people say, start with the end in mind. So create your picture, create your Taj Mahal within what your Taj Mahal looks like. If you can't afford Rolls-Royce, then let's scale it down a little bit and get it fit for purpose. But then go, what are all the elements that I need to complete that picture? Too often we see that jumbled piece, all the pieces aren't there. So companies will need, the absolute foundation of mining is sound geology. So if you're still working off just a written geology report and thinking that your mine plan that you did at the start of the operation 5 years ago is okay, then you're not in the right picture. Planning is an ongoing, enduring process that needs to happen over multiple horizons. And if we don't get to that, then it doesn't matter what your SAP system is. You are not going to have the foundation right and the building blocks to get there. And if companies don't have the budget, they should start simply. And then as they mature, make further investments and come up the value chain as you can afford it. But yeah, get the building blocks complete would be my...
Absolutely. That's a good point. So on cue, let me move to Harsh. Harsh, if I can move to you next. See, as the point Simon was making into where to start, one of the things we also tell our clients is to start by looking ahead next 4 or 5 years and create a roadmap. And once you've created a roadmap, you can then go on with individual pieces that fit your size. And then you don't need to put everything in one block, in one shot. You can pick the sizes that suit your business. So Harsh, given the way you see the Indian mining industry, what do you think are the 2-3 obvious areas one should start at? So fuel consumption, for example. So should they look at fleet management? Is that an area they should typically start with? Or is it mine planning, as Simon was talking about, shortened vertical planning, dynamic mine planning? Is that something they should start with? What are the 2-3 areas you think we should start with? Harsh? Harsh, are you still around? Okay. Okay. Maybe if I can bring that back to you, Simon. I think how would you look at that? So, do you think? I mean, given your understanding of the Indian mining industry, mine planning is start, or energy efficiency, obviously fuel consumption, so fleet management, is that an area to start? So, where do you think are the 2-3 areas you can typically start with? Obviously, India won't look at automated, fleet management because that's the next level thing. Maybe 2-3
years. Yeah. So for about 10 years, I worked as a business consultant and coach. And so the way we always started was to walk into a business and have a look and see what is actually going on today. And so I didn't always get one answer, but there was always nearly a couple of themes. And I suspect that if you walk onto a mine site in India and talk to the management, go through the maintenance things, walk around the site, within a day or two, I suspect you will have some idea at a very conceptual level, where is the place to start? So in an operation I went to about 2 years ago, sorry, I haven't been back since February, but it was clear as we drove around that the roads were in terrible condition. Yeah. And if the roads are in terrible condition, the trucks are going to have maintenance issues, and and there's just a flow on to productivity from there. So would I go back to geology and start? I'd go, no, that's not going to change the dial. So let's actually start with some basics and let's get a couple of operational things sorted. And now let's come back around to going, okay, now what do we need to do? Now, to fix the roads, maybe we did need to schedule the equipment, right? To just allocate the right capital, ensure there actually is fleet to do it. And so these things will then connect back to some of the overall planning. But sometimes you just can see that that's where you need to start and carry on. Got it.
I see that Harsh is complaining that his mic is muted. Can I request the FICCI team to unmute Harsh's mic so that he can also comment? Yeah, Harsh. Yeah, thank you. Your views, Harsh, on the same question? Yeah. We can't hear you, Harsh. Just check if you're still muted. Yeah. No, we still can't hear you. I can hear you at least. You're still muted. Yeah. No, I can't hear you at least. Is there an issue with the line? No, Harsh, sorry, I can't hear you at least. Requesting the FICCI team to fix.
No, he has been muted. He has been unmuted. In fact, all the speakers, and you all are also at the co-host, Rajesh. If there's any problem, just check because we have not muted him.
Okay. Harsh, if you can attempt one last time, see if it works. I can't hear you at least. No, sorry, Harsh, I can't hear you.
There's some problem. Let me just check, because I'll just check with my IT team also.
Okay, no problem, no problem. So
And
while
we
sorry, Harsh,
identify some of the people who have questions. We have the next 10 minutes max.
Sure.
So Rajesh, if
Sure.
they can ask the question themselves, it will be nice. Then we can.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. So let me invite maybe Mohammed Danish has been asking a few questions. Mohammed, you want to ask your question? Mohammed Danish, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay. Nandini, would you like to ask your question? Nandini, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, so I think there's some issue from a network. Yes, Mr. Sanjay Kumar, go ahead.
Yeah. I would just like to know, I was associated with Autotech, and we have been working with these mineral technologies for many of the ilmenite-based projects. I just would like to know one very small question, where it's in mining ore. What do you think the energy efficiency, and what is the prospect, what you see the scenario of Indian mining as a part of it? Say, my question was 1 ton of coal or iron ore or any sort of ore exploration, as energy efficient mining, and what are the process that India should adopt? Because if the ore is costly, the further downline process become costly and become so that's very important from the rising of the ore, exploration of ore efficiently.
Okay, so Harsh, you want to take that question?
I can try if that's useful.
Yeah, Harsh, sorry, we can't hear you. Simon, yeah, you can attempt that. Yes. Yes, Simon, over to you.
So what we're seeing around the world is that different countries and different situations are all looking for energy efficiency. At the moment in Indonesia, we are looking in a project across multiple mining methods, which include IPCC, in-pit crushing conveying, drag lines, electric trucks and shovels, with the prospect of changing them out from diesel power into electrification. Now, that works only in its infancy, but what it does, it asks us and challenges us to look at not only the actual lease, but the whole environment and the ecosystem around which you're operating, and say, how do we actually lower energy costs, and can we find a smarter way? Now, in the way as we do that, we then look at dumping, and we look at, how can we reduce haul distances? So the whole process at its core is doing that. For one of the other major global international companies, we're looking at can we actually electrify normal haul trucks, and in what haulage solutions would that happen? So trucks without engines, without diesel or diesel engines. So you change the engine and the fuel tanks out for batteries, and hook them up to an electrical wire, which is fed by hopefully an efficient, efficient energy system. You use that to haul out of the pits, and then circulate on your batteries as you're at the bottom of the pit. So, look, we're looking at any number of things. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but look, it's a goal of companies.
Yeah, Simon, thank you very much. I have a last one thing. Connecting to this, your answer was very good as a common you have given. How do you rate this dry beneficiation versus wet beneficiation of the thing? Because energy efficiency comes from there. Suppose in many of the area we see this coal beneficiations, washing and all become dry, because there are a lot of waste, lot of water is being used. You have to recycle, you have to again make it useful. So zero level discharge, so many things concept comes. So if this goes, so how do you consider this dry and wet beneficiation or washing? Energy.
Look, you're stepping well outside my specific areas of expertise, but
No, you can tell me general. It's no question.
Yeah, look, I mean, in general, I think what will win out, right, over time is that everyone will look at economics, both environment and economics drives the outcome, right? So how do we get our social license to operate and environmentally operating appropriately? And then given those ways that we want to work as responsible companies, how do we get the lowest cost? Now, the cost is going to be related to not just the cost of processing, but taking that through to a revenue number and a net present value in an economic model. And so we need to consider the value that we get for that mineral. So if it has a higher grade and therefore higher marketability and gets a higher price, then perhaps it can absorb a little more energy. But if it's a lower quality, lower price, then you would use the lower energy and therefore lower cost solution. So I'm not sure that it'll be one fits all. It'll be about your market. It will be about quite a holistic evaluation to determine what that outcome is. It's quite a strategic evaluation that you would do, and we do it quite often with. We can do all the economic evaluation, but quite often we work with a company like EY or someone, and we do part, and they do the other part as they're working with their client to find the best solutions.
Yeah.
Hi Rajesh, this is Danish here. There was having the Wi-Fi issues, couldn't able to connect back to you that time. So can I have a question to Simon, if you allow me?
Sure.
Hi Simon, this is Danish here from DNT Kolkata. I have just one question for you, Simon. As we all know that this is a time of COVID-19 and we are going for mine automation. So do we have any kind of current package, which provide kind of digital owners engineer or remote online, mine due diligence, which can help clients to update their existing mining operations and provide web-based kind of services?
So yes, I guess is the short answer. Look, on our website, we recently published a paper in relation to remote site visits. And while they don't totally replace what you can do face-to-face, if I've got the question right, we're finding there are situations where we can do things. In relation to complete packages for automation, I don't think there is such a thing yet. They are quite bespoke still, but more and more companies are taking up the challenge of automation, and so it is becoming more mainstream in a range style of operations. In Australia, it's mainly iron ore, but we're starting to see 2 or 3 coal companies embracing trials, and we expect that to accelerate. I'm not sure if that was the whole answer.
Yeah, I got your point.
I think Rajesh, Nandini has joined in. Maybe you can ask. Yeah.
Yes, Nandini, go ahead with your question, please. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Just to introduce myself very briefly, we manufacture mining electrical equipment specifically for underground mechanized mines. We work with a German company called Bartek. We do mine automation, and we also have equipment that have work totally with backup data loggers, etc. So you can join them through fiber optic cable for total mine communication and control. My question to Simon is that, do you have anything similar in terms of technology in Australia that can give you instant access to data for your mechanized mine, at least at the coal face, from the surface? Because that would be very interesting for us to study and work with probably together.
Yeah, look, I'm more than happy to pass that through to our underground coal team. But yes, there are obviously communication systems that and dealing with data from underground mines in Australia. But look, I encourage Indian companies to see what else and how they can augment things that Australia does, and get in touch and send us a note.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Moshmi, I think it's 12:30. Do we have time for one more question, Moshmi?
Yes, one more. And what we can suggest is, which we've been doing very successfully for all our international webinars, we download all the questions and we will send it to Austrade and to Mr. Partha, and he can run it through, and we will give the email ID so they can contact them. So that
Sounds
will be
good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, if we can take one last question, anyone? Okay, Maybe one. Let me wind it up with a question for Catherine and John. Catherine, any country to country sort of understandings or directional thoughts you have on how we can? I don't know if Catherine and John are still around, but any thoughts on how we can sort of collaborate at a country level? In terms of Australia, of course, is a friendly country. A lot of collaborations happening across sectors. So any thoughts on that from a mining sector perspective?
I'll make a couple of top-line remarks and then I'll hand over to John in case he has anything further. But I think that we need to see how the MOUs that were signed under this, the MOUs under the CSP, under the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, how they start to play out. There are a number of areas of collaboration under the Critical Minerals MOU, and Austrade is actually working at the moment to say, well, practically, how do we make things happen under that? What is the opportunities for business, particularly almost quick wins? What would that look like? And how do we start to roll those out? So I'm working along with Partha and Rumki and others to look at how that evolves. But at the more strategic level and long term, as you know, these things take a while, but the discussions are being had. And there is such a warmth between our two prime ministers and a commitment to see movement that we're actually seeing that. There is dialogue and reporting back mechanisms. So I'd like to think that we will see more action under the concept of MOUs than perhaps is usually expected. So that's my very top level position. Did you want to add anything there, John?
Look, I think you got some key points there, Catherine, but what I'd also add is, the Australian government published the India Economic Strategy less than 2 years ago. It identified the resources sector as one of the key areas for collaboration between Australia and India. We try and focus on doing proactive things around getting businesses to talk to each other and hopefully deals to be done. We most recently did the Australia-India Business Exchange in the end of February, where we took a couple of hundred Australian companies to India. It feels like it was the last century, but it was actually only 6 months ago, where we are creating connections between our countries consistently. We're doing things like this today. So as well as the high level, activities like this are always really, really important to continue to move it. And with 4 years in India, I kind of say, you move forward step by step or centimeter by centimeter. We're not going to move. There's not going to be a quantum leap, but we're committed, and I think India is also committed to moving forward. So we've got to try lots of things, which I think we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Catherine and John. So with that, let me just wind it up. Thank you, Catherine, John, Harsh. I know there were some audio issues, but thank you very much for your session. Simon, thank you for the wonderful session and all the patience in taking the questions that we all had. Thank you, Ms. Vandana, for the keynote address and sort of setting this in motion. So I'm Rajesh Ivaturi. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to introduce myself, but I'm just winding up, a partner with ENY. ENY, of course, work with many of the mining and sort of metals companies in India. So we are happy to support you whichever you need. Maushmi, handing it back to you for closure. Yeah.
Yes, and
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for joining in. And this is, I hope, one of the many series of mining webinars we intend to do. So now that Rajesh is there on board with us, and I hope all of you will hear from us in the next couple of months. Any kind of B2Bs and B2Gs would like to do, please send us a mail at the FICCI at the invitation mail, where you can send it, reach out to us, and we will connect you to the required, Australian agency or any other company you would wish to connect to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Everybody, thank you.
Simon,
Thank you.
thank you, everybody.
See you all.
See you.